I'm here with John Rossetti, who took part in the BBC's Living in the Past experiment in 1977-78. And after 13 months living in this Iron Age existence, what was it like to be suddenly dunked back into the centre of modern Bath?
Well, to be honest, it was actually absolutely shocking. And we'd all been looking forward to it, of course. Mm-hmm. And people used to say to us afterwards, well, what did you really miss? You must have missed all these great things. But firstly, we were shocked by the speed of modern life and modern people. We'd really slowed down. I remember trying to cross the street in Bath and not knowing which way to look. It was just all too fast. We just weren't used to it. You know.
So even the physical speed at which someone walks along the pavement, even that was faster.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. We just sort of mentally we'd slowed down. Mm-hmm. You know, so it was really quite a shock. You know, and I remember when we got the BBC put on this great lavish meal for us. They thought, wouldn't it be great? You can have a, you know, we had. Caviar and wine and what you would think were the most fantastic food you could possibly have, you know, meats, etc.
Yes.
And most of it tasted quite insipid to us. The thing that was most fantastic were the potatoes. We hadn't had potatoes, of course, for a year.
Right.
And they came around and said, we'd like some more caviar, we'd like some more meat. We said, no, we just have more potatoes, please. They were just so fantastic, you know. So that was something that we hadn't had, because the meat we had... our own meat was better than what we were being offered at this meal.
Right.
You know, and so there were very different things than you might imagine that we really, really enjoyed. The other thing that was nice was actually having a bath. That was a proper bath.
Right.
That was nice.
Without the clay.
Without the clay. But, so to actually feel clean in a modern sense was quite nice, unusual. We were looking forward to it, mind you, for a year.
Right.
And the other thing that was great was having shoes that you could walk in. I mean, probably the thing we missed most, apart from potatoes, was shoes, Wellington boots, things that actually work. Because we spent a year with wet feet, cold feet, feet that were torn with brambles and thistles. And, you know, we tried so hard to make footwear that would work in that environment. We've made a lot of leather shoes, but of course they wouldn't last very long before they got cut with the flints.
Right.
We'd try and put a wooden sole and strap it on with leather, but if it was wet, it all slipped about. It just wasn't very practical. You couldn't really run very much unless your feet were much harder than ours were.
Right.
So even footwear was an absolute nightmare. I just revel in the joys of like a modern pair of trainers. They're so fantastic.
Yes.
We don't appreciate how good these things are.
Having done a lot of reenactment, it can be grippy, it can be waterproof, it can be strong, it can be lots of things, but there is no material that is grippy on all surfaces and waterproof and flexible and comfortable and strong other than modern plastics and rubbers. And I'm greatly more appreciative of these things.
So no, it was fantastic. So not the things that people would think we missed. You know, we didn't miss, I don't know, television but maybe missed books. Of course, we were in a pre-literate society.
What about music?
It was stories that we did. We told each other stories. We didn't have. It was quite difficult for me, as a mathematician, not to be able to write anything down. So again, you had to do everything without recording things or writing things down, and it was, you know, you sort of, your brain worked slightly differently.
You say you couldn't write things down, and you could presumably have written something down if that were terribly important. You could have got a flat surface and found something to make a mark. But was it also partly to do with the integrity of the Iron Age-ness? They didn't write stuff down, therefore I'm not going to. I'm playing the part of being the Iron Age man.
We didn't have the material, did we? I mean, we're restricted by our technology more than anything else. Plus the fact that it was a very hard physical life.
Yeah.
I thought beforehand, I'd have lots of time in the evening to think about things, you know, quietly. I thought maybe I'd have a go at solving Fermat's last theorem, for example, which has since been solved by a British mathematician, but in those days it hadn't been. I thought that would be great, I'll have this time to think about these things. But actually, when you got to bed, you were just so physically exhausted. You didn't. The things you thought you might do were just too physically tired to be able to do. Plus, not having anything to write down meant that there was only so much you can develop in terms of ideas.
Did you come up with a different way of thinking of what spare time is. I mean, today a lot of us have a job, it's 9 to 5, and then when that's finished, then it's spare time. But perhaps what was spare time and what wasn't spare time was a much fuzzier concept.
No, you didn't have spare time. You were really working dawn till dusk. What you would do, like I said, like around the fire in the evening, is if you had something you wanted to like do a bit of carving, wood carving, try and make some musical instruments. You maybe do that in the evening when you couldn't do some of the other tasks. So that was our spare time, was just only because you couldn't do other things that you might want to do. So in the dark usually is when we had our spare time.
Right.
And that was it really. I mean, in the summer where you had the long days, you were also working hardest. You were working to get the crops in. You were having to tend the animals. You had young animals to look after. Well, the days were longer in the summer. There was much more to do.
You had a lot of animals. I think when the project started, just before the project started, you had 75 animals, and then you got on top of that the polecats, and you bought some more pigs, and the sheep then all had lambs. So you must have had at least 100, and then the bees are on top of that. So you're just a few people, so you're massively outnumbered by your livestock. How many of these did you end up naming?
We didn't name many. We had a big wild boar, and he was nice red colour actually. We called him Idi, rather politically incorrect. Idi Amin was a famous leader in Africa at the time. Yes. Yeah. For some reason we called him Idi, and he was very big and very hard to manoeuvre. I mean, they're incredibly strong, these animals, and his main task was to produce offspring. So we were trying to get him to mate with the sow,
right?
But he was never successful in it. We tried all sorts of things. We tried to give him special fertility. We made fertility rattles to rattle over his head.
And they didn't work?
Amazing, they didn't work. So after many months of trying, and some people trying to get him to do the business, in the end we decided we'd have to eat him. So Idi was killed and eaten and salted down for meat. And
all right. And was it Idi who infected your finger? Is it sort of revenge?
It may have been. It may have been him or one of the others. I can't remember. To be honest.
You also got a thwack on the head, I seem to remember, while stringing up a pig carcass.
Yeah. Well, of course, pigs are incredibly heavy, and so what we had to do was we would, after we'd killed them, we'd use burning straw to burn off the bristles and scrape that off the skin, and then we had to try and get it up by its back legs in order to stick it, to get to stick its throat and get
drain the blood. Yeah.
But it was so heavy, we built up a sort of cantilever arrangement to pull on one end of a great big tree trunk and lift it up at the other end so we could get its feet off the ground.
Right.
And while we were doing that, it was so heavy. It slipped from our grasps, and I was at the wrong side, and the top of the tree came down and hit me on the head and knocked me out.
Oh, actually knocked you out?
Actually knocked me out. So I wasn't, I was out for half an hour or so I missed the rest of the killing of the pig, which was quite a photographic moment. I think the BBC didn't show it all, but obviously John Rossetti it was who stuck the pig, and there was quite a lot of blood spraying everywhere.
Oh, yes.
I think that was probably...
Wouldn't be popular on telly now.
Wouldn't be very popular on television, no. But it was, from our point of view, it was a celebration of, farming, and we would have meat for a while, and it was, something you celebrated. It wasn't something, that modern people experienced.
Okay, well, reading the description of that incident in the book, it doesn't mention you're being knocked out for half an hour. It says you fell over and shook your head and got up again.
No.
Okay, it's sparing us the truth. So you've got this gory moment, and you have 3 children whose parents are vegetarians. And how do they react to it?
Well, the Lindsay, the vegetarian, was visibly shocked. Really, she really didn't like that at all.
Right.
And she was afraid her children would be upset.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't. In actual fact, they thought, "Oh, great, we'll have bacon." Was their reaction. Right. But but it was a difficult moment for the vegetarians. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. I mean, it wasn't.
Well, for the adult vegetarians.
The adult vegetarians, yes, not really for the children. They were, they've been living for a while in our environment, and they saw animals and they saw us kill animals, and they were much less sensitive to it than their parents, in fact.
How safe do you think the children were on that project? They're living in this world with pits and mud and animals with horns and sharp things and so forth. Were you ever concerned for their safety?
I think they were pretty safe. I mean, kids are pretty smart, they look after themselves, they learn quickly.
Right.
They had a few near scrapes and accidents when they were playing around, and sometimes playing around with knives and things, so
right.
You know, you had to keep a bit of an eye out, but I don't think...
so the world in general, you don't think was any more dangerous than the world we live in now, where kids might get run over by cars? And
I think it was safer, because there was a whole community of adults that would be looking after them.
Yeah.
So I think they coped very well.
And they left the project a little bit early, a few months before the end, and I imagine that must have changed the atmosphere of the whole place a bit, not having children around.
It did a bit, and there'd been some tensions in the group. It was partly over the vegetarian issue, so it was a shame to see them go. You know, obviously, you know, that was an important part of the community. So it was definitely a shame to see them go. But in a way, after that, life was a bit easier, because you know some of the tensions were gone from the group, and in fact so we were down to 5 couples then, and it's
right.
4 of that 5 that still see each other every 3 months.
Right. Well, that is what, and again, that the gleam came back into your eye, that the bondedness of the group clearly is something that's a major boon.
And the people that have come into the group since, because you know, people like myself and my wife have split up and got new partners.
Right.
So the group has actually expanded through divorce and remarriage, and so it's actually got bigger. And people who come into it obviously get introduced to it as an extending community, and then we've got not long after the project finished, quite a lot of us had children at around about the same time. So there's a generation of our age children who are now in their late 20s and early 30s who are also part of it, and we've even now got the next generation down, but they'll all come together. We did have a reunion last year. We had to go to a holiday camp because there were so many of us. There were 35 of us, and you know, it was just
proper extended old-fashioned family.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you just called them Iron Age children.
Yes.
Who are now grown up. Do they think of themselves as Iron Age children?
I think they do. They call themselves the Iron Age.
So even though they weren't born until after the project had stopped, they
part of that community. Yes.
Right. So so I was talking earlier about how big a part it's played in your life. In fact, that the specialness of this group has been passed down a generation.
Yes, it has indeed, yes.
It's a very special time.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Excellent. Right, more in another video. Lindy!